Tell me something. Have you ever dreamed of owning one of those classic muscle cars that didn't just rule the streets, but also stole our hearts? Because today, my friends, I'm bringing you a selection that's not just brutal. It's absolutely unforgettable. Get ready to discover the 10 most beautiful, powerful, and desired muscle cars of the 1970s. Cars that made history with their V8 engines, aggressive lines, and that roar that still sends chills down our spines even today. And if you love classic cars, forgotten muscle legends, and collector gems as much as I do, take a second to hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell. It doesn't just support this channel, it keeps the history of the cars we love alive. Let's go, because what's coming next is pure horsepower and nostalgia. 1970 Dodge Super Bee 446. Picture this for a second. You're standing in front of a beast dressed in yellow with black stripes slashing across its body, a massive bulging hood with air scoops that looked like the nostrils of a predator. And just when you think it couldn't get any more intimidating, you hear that deep, thunderous growl that literally makes the ground tremble beneath your feet. The story of this car is, in itself, an act of rebellion. Dodge, watching as its rivals got tangled in a horsepower and price war, decided to launch a muscle car that was simple, aggressive, and brutally affordable. The name Super Bee wasn't a coincidence. It was the working class bee, the one that buzzed louder than all the others, but with the deadliest sting on the asphalt. And that sting lived under the hood, a monstrous 440 Magnum 5.8, 7.2 liters, fitted with 3 two-barrel carburetors, the legendary six-pack setup. The result was an official 390 horsepower and over 490 pound-feet of torque. But reality, as always, was different. This car easily pushed 410 real horsepower, delivering it with a brutality that still sends shivers today. And on the pavement, 0 to 60 miles per hour in just 5.5 seconds, the quarter mile in about 13.5 seconds, and a top speed north of 130 miles per hour. Absolutely wild numbers for a car with the aerodynamics of a brick, but the attitude of a cruise missile. But the magic of the Super Bee wasn't just in the power. It was in how it delivered it. Loud, raw, violent, but honest. No luxury, no fake promises. What you saw was exactly what you got. Pure, unfiltered muscle. And its looks were a perfect reflection of its soul. Functional hood scoops, black stripes, the angry bee emblem, and that unmistakable vibe of a street fighter. A car built to win street races and slap a smile on your face every time you floored it. Its value today? Depending on condition and documentation, it ranges from $90,000 to over $180,000, especially for numbers-matching cars. And here's a fact few people know. The Super Bee was originally created as the affordable, radical version of the Dodge Coronet. But in the process, it became something more, an absolute symbol that you didn't need a fancy car to be king of the asphalt. You just needed muscle, attitude, and a motor willing to scream until it shook your soul. 1974 Dodge Dart Sport 360. Now I want you to do a little exercise with me. Picture a car that, at first glance, doesn't look like the most intimidating ride on the block. A car that flies under the radar until it hits the gas. Because what lives under its hood is pure defiance. Muscle disguised as a compact. In the middle of the oil crisis, and with emissions regulations tightening the industry's throat, many muscle cars started losing their essence. But Dodge wasn't ready to throw in the towel. And that's how the Dart Sport 360 was born. One final rebellious punch before the golden era of muscle came to an end. Under the hood was a tough 5.9-liter V8, cranking out a respectable 245 horsepower and close to 295 pound-feet of torque. Sure, those numbers might not sound insane today, but back in 1974, when most V8s were getting strangled by regulations, this little warrior was still growling with pride. On the pavement, that translated to 0 to 60 miles per hour in about 7.5 seconds and a quarter mile in around 15.5 seconds. absolutely respectable numbers for a compact, lightweight car. Visually, the Dart was subtle, but not too subtle. Side stripes, functional hood scoops, sporty wheels, and above all, that low, aggressive stance. This was the car for someone who didn't need to scream to prove who's boss. They just showed it when the light turned green. And here's a fun, lesser-known fact. The Dodge Dart Sport 360 was kind of a secret weapon on the streets. Many street racers back in the day loved it because it was lighter than most muscle cars, cheaper, and surprisingly easy to modify. What looked like just another Dart could become an absolute missile on wheels with just a few tweaks. Today, if you find one in good condition, prices range between $25,000 and $50,000, depending on how original and well-preserved it is. 1971, Plymouth GTX 440. This was the muscle car for people who wanted brutal power, but also a touch of luxury. The perfect balance between elegance and savagery. A wolf in sheep's clothing with steel fangs. Plymouth, knowing that the market was getting flooded with loud, aggressive muscle cars, decided to create something different. The GTX wasn't just a car to race. It was a refined muscle car. With upgraded interiors, better finishes, and premium details, it stood apart from its rowdier siblings like the Roadrunner or the Super B. Under the hood, this monster packed a 440 Super Commando VOD-8, 7.2 liters, cranking out a wild 375 horsepower and 480 pound-feet of torque. And for the truly speed-obsessed, there was the option of the infamous 426 Hemi, pushing an absurd 425 horsepower, turning the GTX into a missile disguised as a luxury car. On the street, that meant 0 to 60 miles per hour in just 5.8 seconds and a quarter mile in about 13.7 seconds. Insane numbers for a car this heavy and comfortable, but in the best possible way. Visually, the 1971 GTX is a work of art. Its rounded front shock-nose grille, functional hood scoops, and those muscular yet fluid lines make it one of the most beautiful and underrated muscle cars of its time. It's impossible to watch one roll by without turning your head. As for production, only 2,942 units of the GTX were built in 1971, which makes it a seriously sought-after collector piece today. Current prices range between $70,000 and $150,000, depending on condition and engine configuration. And here's a fact few people know. The Plymouth GTX was known as the gentleman's muscle car. It had all the rage, speed, and power of its wild brothers, but wrapped in a more elegant package like stepping into a luxury lounge. With wheels that could absolutely destroy asphalt. And now, let me drop a question that's going to keep you awake tonight. If right now, today, you had to choose between a raw, rugged, no-frills muscle car like the Super B, or a muscle car with class, comfort, and the same level of brutality like this GTX, which one would you pick? Pure muscle, or muscle with elegance? Drop your answer in the comments, because trust me, this decision isn't as easy as it sounds. 1971, Ford Torino Cobra, 429. There are cars that need no introduction. You just see one, and your brain, your heart, and your senses instantly get it. That's exactly what happens when you cross paths with a Ford Torino Cobra. This is the kind of car that feels like it wasn't just designed for speed, it was designed to intimidate. Its silhouette, its presence, it's a rolling declaration of war. The Cobra was Ford's answer for anyone who wanted the most brutal machine the brand could offer at the time. No luxury, no fluff, no compromises. Just one goal, slam the pedal and leave a cloud of smoke and burnt rubber behind. Under the hood of this beast roared the legendary 429 Cobra Jet V8, a 7.0-liter monster officially rated at 370 horsepower. But we all know those numbers were conservative. Experts from the era claim this engine easily made over 400 real horsepower paired with an insane 450 pound-feet of torque. The result? A missile on wheels capable of doing 0 to 60 miles per hour in just 5.8 seconds and tearing through the quarter mile in around 13.9 seconds. Absolutely absurd numbers for a car this size. And speaking of size, the Torino was no small car. It was big, wide, long, and carried a street presence that filled the entire road. Its design, with that sharp front end, split grille, recessed headlights, and those fluid lines running the length of the body, made it a work of art that was both muscular and aggressive at the same time. And here's a fact that very few people know. The 1971 Torino Cobra was practically Ford's last great roar before emissions regulations, skyrocketing insurance costs, and the oil crisis slowly started killing the golden era of American muscle. It was a swan song, a desperate scream that said, "Enjoy it now, because this won't last forever." As for production numbers, Ford built roughly 3,054 units of the Torino Cobra in 1971, which makes it a highly sought-after piece for serious collectors today. Current values range between $70,000 and $130,000, depending on condition and originality. 1972, Pontiac LeMans GT. The story of this car is a story of resistance. In the middle of the decline of the golden era, with emissions regulations and skyrocketing insurance strangling muscle cars, Pontiac wasn't ready to back down without one last fight. And that's how the LeMans GT was born, a sporty variant that took the best of the brand's mid-size platform and wrapped it in pure attitude and power. Under the hood, the LeMans GT could be optioned with several engines, but the one that truly made this car speak with authority was the mighty 455 HOV8, a 7.5-liter beast, producing a solid 300 horsepower and a brutal 500-pound-foot of torque. In real-world terms, that meant the LeMans GT could sprint from 0 to 60 miles per hour in about 6.4 seconds, with a quarter mile dropping in around 14.5 seconds. Impressive numbers for a car of its size and for an era already battered by restrictions. Visually, the LeMans GT was pure attitude. Its recessed headlights, split grille, functional hood scoops, and racing stripes running along the body made it stand out. Even when parked next to giants like the GTO, it was, without question, a muscle car with a touch of elegance, less flashy, but just as defiant. And here's a fun fact that very few know. The LeMans GT became, for many, a gateway into the world of muscle cars when GTO prices started soaring. It was more affordable, just as muscular, and surprisingly easy to modify to squeeze out even more power. As for production, Pontiac built around 5,802 units of the LeMans GT in 1972, making it a highly sought-after car today by those who know exactly what it represents. Current market value ranges between $35,000 and $70,000, depending on condition and configuration. 1971. Mercury Cyclone Spoiler, get ready, because what we're about to dive into is one of those hidden gems that very few people know about. But when you see it, when you hear it, you immediately understand that you're standing in front of something absolutely special. The Mercury Cyclone is, without a doubt, one of the most radical, outrageous, and brutal muscle cars Mercury ever dared to build. This car was born in a time when speed wasn't just a style choice. It was a declaration of war. Ford, through Mercury, wanted to build a car that could humiliate anything on a NASCAR track, and trust me, they nailed it. Under that long, muscular, menacing hood slept a beast, the legendary 429 Cobra Jet VI8 7.0 liters, officially rated at 370 horsepower and a monstrous 450 pound-feet of torque. And what did all that insanity do on the road? 0 to 60 miles per hour in just 5.8 seconds and a quarter mile in around 13.9 seconds. Numbers that are still impressive even by today's standards. But what truly made the Cyclone Spoiler a rolling spectacle was its shape. That razor-sharp front end, the narrow elongated grille, the functional scoops, the massive rear spoiler, and those flowing lines that looked like they were carved in a wind tunnel. Everything about this car screamed, "I'm a bullet designed to go fast, really fast." Here's a fact few people know. The Mercury Cyclone Spoiler was built with one clear goal: to dominate the racetrack, especially NASCAR. Every line, every curve, every aerodynamic detail had a purpose: to reduce drag and maximize straight-line speed. It was literally a race car disguised as a street-legal muscle machine. As for production, fewer than 1,300 units of the Cyclone Spoiler were built in 1971, making it a true unicorn for collectors today. Its current value ranges from $75,000 to easily over $150,000, depending on condition and originality. And now, I've got a direct question for you. If you had the choice between a pure street muscle car or a beast built with racing DNA like this Cyclone Spoiler, which one would you pick? Drop your answer in the comments. I'm reading everything. 1973, Oldsmobile Hurst Olds. The story of this car begins when Oldsmobile, determined to keep the muscle car flame alive during the age of regulations, partnered with Hurst Performance. The result? A masterpiece on wheels. A car that mixed luxury, exclusivity, and a whole lot of attitude. Under its massive hood lived the rock-solid 455 Rocket 5.8, 7.5 liters, pumping out a solid 275 horsepower and a monstrous 500 pound-feet of torque. The numbers may sound moderate for a classic muscle car, but here's where the magic lies. This engine delivered brutal torque from low RPMs, making every hit of the throttle feel like a punch straight to the chest. On the pavement, the Hurst Olds hit 0 to 60 miles per hour in about 7.2 seconds and crushed the quarter mile in around 15.4 seconds. Impressive numbers for a car this heavy and this luxurious in 1973. And when it comes to presence, this car had it all. That bulging hood with functional scoops, gold and white accents, the proud Hurst badges, a rear spoiler, and those chrome wheels reflecting the sunlight as this beast rolled down the street. It was impossible to see this car and not realize you were looking at something very, very special. Here's a fun fact that very few know. The 1973 Hurst Olds was the official pace car for the Indianapolis 500, an honor reserved only for cars that represented the very best in American performance and engineering. This wasn't just a muscle car. It was a muscle car with racing pedigree. As for production, only 1,097 units of the Hurst Olds were built in 1973, making it a true collector's item today. Current market value ranges from $50,000 to over $90,000, depending on condition and originality. 1975, Pontiac Firebird, Formula 400. My friends, if you thought the golden era of American muscle was dead by 1975, it's only because you've never come face to face with a Firebird Formula 400. Because this car is, quite literally, an act of resistance, a savage scream refusing to go quietly. While most muscle cars were losing horsepower, aggression, and spirit, Pontiac stood up and said, "We're not backing down." The Firebird 400 was the perfect alternative for anyone who wanted pure engine brutality, but without the giant wings or flashy graphics of the Trans Am. This was the car for someone who didn't need to prove anything to anyone. Just step on the gas and let the roar speak for itself. Under that bulging hood with twin air scoops lived a legendary 6.6-liter V8 of 400 cubic inches, producing a very respectable 245 horsepower and 360 pound-feet of torque. And let's be real, while those numbers might seem tame compared to the pre-1972 era, this Firebird was still every bit a real muscle car, delivering raw, solid power, full of character. On the road, it could sprint from 0 to 60 miles per hour in about 7.6 seconds, which is more than respectable for a car that was already battling strict emissions rules, rising insurance costs, and the oil crisis. Aesthetically, the Firebird Formula 400 is a masterpiece of aggressive simplicity. Fluid lines, twin hood scoops, rounded bumpers adapted to do regulations, and that subtle Formula badge that seemed to whisper, "Don't underestimate what's under here." And here's a fact very few know. The Formula 400 in 1975 represented more than just a muscle car. It was the choice of purists, of those who said, I don't need all the flash of the Trans Am, I just want engine, performance, and attitude. And believe me, this car delivered. Its current value ranges between $30,000 and $60,000, depending on condition and originality. 1971 AMC Javelin AMX. My friends, if until now we've been talking about iconic, legendary, and powerful muscle cars, what we have here is something else entirely. This is the most underrated, most rebellious, and at the same time, most radical muscle car ever to come out of an American factory. Meet the AMC Javelin AMX, American Motors Corporation's answer to the absolute dominance of the Big Three, Ford, GM, and Chrysler. AMC was the brand of the outsider, the one that didn't play by the rules, the one bold enough to look the giants in the eye and say, we can do it too. And oh, they absolutely could, because the Javelin AMX wasn't just a muscle car, it was a statement, proof that horsepower, speed, and attitude weren't exclusive to the big brands. Under its imposing hood lived a savage 401 V8, 6.6 liters, pushing out 330 horsepower and 430 pound-feet of torque. Insane numbers for a car that, besides being beautiful, was also relatively lighter than most of its rivals. The result? 0 to 60 miles per hour in about 6.1 seconds, and the quarter mile in roughly 14.2 seconds. Numbers that still send shivers down your spine today. And if we talk about looks, AMC absolutely nailed it. The 1971 redesign turned the Javelin into one of the most beautiful and aggressive muscle cars of its time. That long, sharp front end, the razor-sharp grille, the muscular lines flowing through the body, and those flared rear fenders, this was literally a car that looked like it was moving even when standing still. And here's a fact very few know. The AMC Javelin AMX wasn't just a street success, it was also a champion on the track, winning the Trans Am Racing Series by beating giants like the Mustang and the Camaro. Yes, the underdog beat them at their own game, proving that horsepower and spirit aren't measured by company size but by passion. As for production, AMC built about 2,054 units of the Javelin AMX in 1971, making it an extremely rare and highly desirable gem for collectors today. Its current value ranges between $50,000 and $90,000, depending on condition, originality, and configuration. And now I'm asking you directly, if you had the chance to choose, would you join Team Big Three, Mustang, Camaro, Charger, or would you dare to be different, to be the rebel, and choose this legendary outsider called the Javelin AMX? Drop your answer in the comments. I'm reading everything. 1970 Chrysler 300 Hurst. Get ready, because what we've got here isn't just a muscle car. It's a giant, a creature of steel and gasoline that didn't need to roar to command respect. It wasn't built to race the quarter mile, because it already owned the highway the moment it showed up. Meet the majestic Chrysler 300 Hurst. This wasn't your typical muscle car. It was a luxury muscle cruiser, a high-speed grand tourer, for those who wanted ridiculous power but weren't willing to sacrifice comfort, elegance, or space for 5 people and their luggage. Chrysler, together with Hurst Performance, yes, the same legends behind some of the wildest machines of the era, built this beast with a single mission: to be the absolute king of the open road. Beneath that seemingly endless hood lived a motor worthy of a locomotive, the legendary 440 Magnum 5.8, 7.2 liters, producing a monstrous 375 horsepower and nearly 480 pound-feet of torque. And even though it was far from light, this colossus could still rocket from 0 to 60 miles per hour in just 6.8 seconds with a top speed of over 130 miles per hour. All of that while you cruise comfortably in what basically felt like a rolling luxury lounge. Visually, it was simply imposing. Painted in elegant spinnaker white with gold accents, the Chrysler 300 Hurst looked like a luxury yacht gliding over asphalt. That massive hood bulge, the giant hood scoop, the intimidating grille, and the sharp rear end. It had a presence that made any other car, no matter how big, look small next to it. And here's a fact almost no one knows. Only around 485 units of the Chrysler 300 Hurst were ever built in 1970, making it an absolute treasure in American automotive history. Its current value ranges between $80,000 and $150,000, depending on condition and originality. And there you have it, my friends. 10 absolutely brutal, beautiful, and unforgettable muscle cars from the 1970s, each one with its own story, its own personality, its own roar, and its own way of making our hearts race even today. But now it's your turn. Tell me in the comments, which one of these beasts stole your heart? Which one would you love to have in your garage? Fire up that V8 and feel the world shake under your feet? Don't just sit there watching, because here we're not just spectators. We're a community of absolute fanatics for muscle cars, classic cars, and real car culture. And if this video gave you chills, I've got good news. You can't miss the first part of this video, where we explore 10 more legendary muscle cars from the 70s that will leave you absolutely breathless. Click right here and join me for the ride. Because this, my friends, isn't just about cars. This is passion. See you there in part 1.